Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Sorry for the stuff on Wednesday. We were intending to do a show, but we had some logistical issues. But we're back, and we have some interesting races, especially in the Eastern Conference. I look at the West, and I think the 8 teams are decided. I mean, not mathematically, but pretty much. But in the East, it's a cluster. And we're going to have an interesting little less than 2 weeks going down the stretch for playoff positioning. But we'll start, as always, with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
All right, so let's talk college basketball just for a minute. We'll talk about the women's college basketball and Caitlyn Clark. I grew up playing basketball. I went to basketball camp. Jen actually played college hoops. So, there is a love for it in my heart. The Knicks killed it over time, but there's still a love in my heart for basketball. And I have to say, I see it. There's a joyful factor with Caitlyn Clark, and I almost feel bad. She's going to get a lot of endorsements, but I don't know what the WNBA can really pay her. Maybe she'll be like Michael Jordan and just supersede the whole league. But what she's doing is phenomenal. Like when I heard her average was like 35.8 for the year, something like that, and she's averaging over 31 a game and like 11 rebounds in the tournament, with a school that's obviously not there all the time. It's an incredible story, and I hope they break all kinds of viewing records just because she deserves it.
She does. And you know what? She's in a long line of exceptional athletes, who are literally so far better than everyone else, and female athletes too, in comparison. Like I think of Serena Williams. I think of Simone Biles. Those people who are transcendent in what they do. And she's young.
Yep.
And, and Russ, I think you're right. She'll never be rewarded financially in the league the way a man would. And that's a whole other conversation. But name, likeness, endorsements. She's got the right image about her. Let's just hope she doesn't get pulled in with some bad advice, because what she's doing right now is she's going to keep her brand and her marketability really high if she stays on this course.
I was going to say she might make more money with NIL money than she will. I mean, not in WNBA, but in terms of endorsements, I don't know how long that plays out. But
this is her last.
I'm just saying in terms of endorsements after the fact, after when she's in the WNBA, if she does,
that's not NIL anymore. Then
it's not NIL. It's just like straight endorsements. But she'll get stuff.
She's making money now. So a couple of things. So I work with a lot of people from Iowa. So they've gone to see her a ton, right? I've been talking about her for a while, just how good she is. And obviously, if you saw the game the other night, her against Reese, and there's obviously, we already know from last year, there's no love lost necessarily between the two of them, though they're good competitors, and they said the right things after the game. And Reese had a good game and would have had a better game if she didn't hurt her ankle. I mean, talking X's and O's, Kim Mulkey did a horrible job of matching up against Clark, trying to play her man-to-man.
I have no love for this coach. I've seen what she's been posting online.
So I used to watch her in college play. So I watched women's basketball for a lot. I watched Cheryl Miller play. I watched Tarasi play. I watched Sue Bird play. I watched pretty much all of them play in college. I mean, and today should be an interesting test because Gino Auriemma will not let Caitlyn Clark beat them alone. He's going to come up with some kind of junk defense and box and one, or triangle and two, whatever. But what she's doing is great. She's a great player. She's a good ambassador for the sport. I mean, you talked about money, right? Ice Cube already offered her $5 million to play in the Big Three League. So that came out about 2 weeks ago as kind of, it's a publicity thing. She's not going to do it, but
stay away from that.
No, I'm saying, but it's just in terms of kind of the marketability that she has, right? I think it'll help. The NBA clearly, in my opinion, is on an upswing. WNBA, if you've watched it the last couple of years, the play has been great. I mean, we're in New York.
What are the salaries like?
Salaries are horrible. I mean, they're better than they were.
I know they're staying in better hotels now. At least they're not.
They're better than they were, because we knew for years, right? Everybody used to play over in Russia, right? Because that's where they went to go play to try to make some real money. So the money's gotten better. But it's nowhere near where it is. Obviously, because of the NBA, right? They also had to fight in terms of not having to fly coach all the time. Was the other fight?
Their washroom was like flea infested. I saw pictures online when they were at hotels.
You can make a lot of money living or being held in a gulag like Griner did. But no, this is the funny thing. It's like, I mean, I'm self-admittedly, not as much into women's sports as maybe I should, but I'm definitely a proponent of it. I mean, I'm big and hope that the PWHL has some success. It sounds like it is. There's going to be expansion. The one game in Toronto that drew, I think it was 17 or 18,000. That was extremely encouraging. But you got all that positive with that, and then you've got an idiot like Bobby Ryan coming on social media and basically saying women's sports is not real sports. I mean, just shut your friggin' mouth, you moron.
I'm going to say something. I don't think even Bobby Ryan meant that for anything other than to get exposure.
Yep.
Bobby Ryan has always sort of been on the edge of just being a weird guy anyhow.
Wrong type of exposure there, Bobby. If that's
but I think, unfortunately, Mike, I think that's what he was looking for. So that was like his hot take, and it was just stupid. That's all.
Yeah.
But
again,
you know what?
Good.
Go ahead, John. No, you go.
You're done. So I was going to say, in terms of ratings, right? You talked about it. So it did a 12.3 or 12.5, depending on you watch, right? My opinion tonight with Paige Buckers, who's phenomenal. Also, the only problem is she's been hurt. But if you watch her, she's probably just as talented and maybe more overall talented than Clark is. Clark's obviously a great shooter and passer. My opinion, the numbers tonight should exceed the 12 point a Friday night with the two of them on prime time. That game should do a big rating, hopefully. And I'm hoping it's one of those. I mean, the game the other night wasn't close. I mean, they didn't do a great job, Iowa, down the stretch in terms of their press break, and they kind of let LSU back in the game. But if they play the kind of game, I think it'd be great for the sport if it's one of those that comes down to a 1 or 2 possession game at the end, and you have people turning in late to increase the visibility of the game itself.
Well, if they can pull a big rating on a Friday night, that's an accomplishment, because Friday nights are usually that's tough. But
I think
but remember, there's no college basketball, no men's college basketball tonight, which helps.
I think they could beat the guys, Jan. What do you think in ratings?
I think so. I think yeah, I mean, I do think, though, if it ends up being like a Purdue UConn, I think that'll do a big game, because a lot of people want to see Edie and a lot of people want to see UConn try to go for the back-to-back. If it's NC State, Alabama, you may not get the same viewership, but I do think that'll do a big rating. But I do think look, South Carolina is the best team in the tournament in terms of the women, irrespective of it's South Carolina, UConn, or South Carolina, Iowa. It should hopefully do a decent rating because it's actually a really good game. But I think tonight, just because of the name factor of the two of them with Buckers and with Clark, it should hopefully do a pretty good rating, is my hope.
All right, let's get started. And, Jan, you started because you're at the top. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, April 5th, 2024.
So I'm Jan Levine. I'm a little shaken and stirred after the earthquake on the East Coast, but fortunately all is well.
I'm Pete Tessier from very balmy Winnipeg today.
Russ Cohen from earthquake-riddled Glassboro.
And I'm Michael Agello, and are these the right glasses for an eclipse? And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Please, they are passing out so many, and they look like 3D glasses. I think there's a conspiracy out there. They're passing out these glasses, and they're not the right glasses, and everybody's going to have corneal damage, and they're going to,
I bought like 6 of them for like $6 or $8 off of Amazon.
Just wear 2 of them, double up there, Russ. So
yeah.
All right, let's start with the Eastern Conference race, because this is nuts, and it's not nuts because there are a bunch of teams that are winning a bunch of games, and this is like who can lose more. You've got teams that are like Pittsburgh that are winning when they need to, but teams like Philadelphia, teams like Washington, teams like Detroit, they just continue to lose. They're mediocre. Some people think that this is a case against the expanded playoff. I still think that's bullcrap. I think the expanded playoff should happen, especially if they expand a couple teams. But last night, Pittsburgh beats Washington. And the Islanders win, and the Islanders right now are in the second wild card. Yes, it's still over. They're not going to make it. But
just keep sticking with that, because
yes, I believe it.
You're in quicksand right now.
Yeah, okay, we'll see.
My question this way. I think if you take a look at the teams that are up for it, I think everybody will admit, and we'll wait for Anthony to get on. Anthony would admit Philly's played over their heads, right? And irrespective of whether they have or they haven't, and Tort's view is he's right. We're here. Like it or don't like it, we're here. We need to try to make it, but they have played over their heads, especially given the backdrop of the Carter Hart with Sean Couturier being hurt, all the stuff that's gone on. They played over their heads, right? You can argue that Detroit, to a certain extent, has also probably played over their heads. You can argue that the Islanders have not played up to their capability, at least from what you expected early, at least defensively. I mean, Semyon Varlamov is basically saving their bacon right now.
Right.
The team that's the surprising one right now that's probably literally come out of nowhere has got to be Pittsburgh, which is why Elliot Freeman made the offhand comment that drew a lot of play of maybe Sidney Crosby as a Hart Trophy candidate if he finds a way to will Pittsburgh into the playoffs.
I mean, and he took a lot of heat for that, but I understand what he's talking about because Crosby is, still one of the top 5 players in this league, and they were 7 or 8 points out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
and
I'll say top 6. I don't think he's going to make.
But again, it's remember the point of what a Hart Trophy is for, right? It's the most. You take him off that team is brutal. I mean,
let's go team by team here, and I'll hold Philadelphia until Anthony joins because he said he was going to join in a few minutes. Pittsburgh is the one that, yes, they're the most surprising, and right now they're riding Crosby, they're riding Malkin and Letang. It's the old gang, and they want to get in the playoffs. Obviously, I think that. Even as recently as 2 weeks ago, they probably thought it was over with, and all the aspersions being cast on Kyle Dubas for the construction of that team. And they're still a long shot because right now they have 81 points. They're 2 points out of a playoff spot, and they have the most games at 76. But honestly, you see the number of teams here vying for 2 spots. Detroit's only fighting for 1 because they're, they only have the chance at the second wild card. But Philadelphia, Washington, to a lesser extent, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, they have a chance at 3rd place in the division or the wild card. And if you're betting on one team, I'm betting with the team with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Erik Karlsson over some of these other teams.
Hey, don't forget Alex Nedeljkovic. He's actually been the better goalie of the 2 between him and Jarry. He's the one that's carried him during this hot streak.
Yeah.
That's
so
fair.
I mean, again,
and they almost traded. They were going to trade him. That was the rumor.
Karlsson, honestly, in my opinion, has really done nothing by comparison. I mean, I think in the beginning of the year, we all said that Letang's numbers were going to be adversely impacted by the presence of Karlsson. And I think they're kind of realizing that Letang overall is probably the better defenseman overall. Offensively, it's Karlsson. Overall, it's got to be him. But look, they got Brian Rust, who's had a very good year, very quietly once again, and every year he seems to do it. Malkin has picked up his game lately, but honestly, it's been Crosby, in essence, taking the team on his back and carrying them through this home stretch. And I think most of us would figure, like you said, Mike, they'll likely end up number 3 in the Metro. If they continue to play the way they have been, them ending up as number 3, I think them not ending up as number 3 would probably be a bigger shock to all of us than them ending up as number 3 in the Metro.
Now, Detroit, of all these teams, I think Detroit is the one that has the least amount of a chance, and not because it's, they're in the Atlantic and the second wild card. I look at the goaltending, and even though Nedeljkovic is taking over for Jarry, even though Lindgren is taking over for Kemper, even though Varlamov is playing more games because they burned out Sorokin, the worst goaltending of all these teams is Alex Lyon and James Reimer in Detroit. And in my estimate, I know that Lyon has played above, and he did this last year in Florida. He got them in the playoffs, Peter. But I look at Detroit with Lyon and Reimer, and of these contending teams, I mean, maybe you can make the case that Philadelphia is worse, but I think Detroit's goaltending is the worst of the 4 or 5 teams that are competing.
Yeah, it might be, but again, there's a lot that can go right with goaltending really quickly. And if you're Detroit, just win, baby, is your motto. That's all you need, right? Like you're there. So is their goaltending going to hold up? No, I think you'd be foolish to put money on that. But could it surprise? Absolutely, Mike. And that's where I think, that's what makes the playoffs fun. And, look, let's be honest. If the name Reimer isn't anything, you've got a little bit of bias on you. But
no, but
there.
You think?
But okay, and he's only the backup. But I'm just saying,
yeah,
he is what he is, and what he is not very good, is what I'm saying. So I have to factor that in.
Well, if you look at the team overall, right, from an overall team perspective, I think most of us probably say Detroit may be, I wouldn't say it's the least talented, but it's clearly not up there with the other team. I mean, they're not as talented as Pittsburgh is overall. I don't think we'd view them as talented as some of the other teams in the race either, based upon, look, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year for them also, right? Supposed to start taking that next step. They've kind of taken a little bit of a quantum leap, and they've gotten a little magic out of Patrick Kane at times this year, who also carried them for a pretty good stretch going into March.
Yeah, but he needs to carry him out. March doesn't really do anything for you. It's now. And that's, I kind of wonder. Now, look, I think Yzerman made a mistake by actually backing Lyon and saying he's my guy. I felt like that was premature, and I like Alex Lyon. So, but look, all these teams are there. Honestly, 2 weeks ago, I counted the Pittsburgh Penguins dead. They're not dead, but they're close. They're like the the Black Knight in Monty Python. They're close.
So they've lost both legs and an arm.
I'll fight you.
The Black Knight in Monty Python.
Now, here's what I would say, though. I would say that, honestly, I think now even Washington, who has dropped a little, but they've been up and down. I think the Islanders are actually going to take the third spot now, and I think it's going to be between the other teams. Mike, I'm not saying this. I'm telling you, I was in the room. They have real leadership with Anders Lee. I feel like Patrick Waugh had to do what he needed to do, playing Varlamov. The Flyers were lucky to get a point in that game against the Islanders with 9 seconds left, but they won a game that could have ended their season if they didn't. And you know what? They played better hockey since. So I'm with Jan. I do think they have a decent shot.
Now, sometimes strength of schedule at the end of the season can be misleading because even the good teams will rest some of their players. But, okay, I'm looking at Pittsburgh right now, and they play Tampa Bay tomorrow, and Tampa Bay is in a race right now for third place with Toronto. They're only 2 points behind the Leafs. So they play Tampa at Toronto, then the head-to-head with Detroit, but then they finish off with Boston, Nashville, and the Islanders. Of those 4 or 5 teams, that might be the toughest schedule.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean, they're facing teams that are all in battles to make the playoffs, right? And you figure even at the end of the year, they're all going to be playing for something. The Islanders most certainly look like they will be, right? Toronto is playing for placement, and I'll say it this way: if Tampa Bay gets ahead of Toronto for the 3 seed, my opinion, they're beating Florida. They're going to exact some revenge and beat Florida because nobody wants to play Tampa Bay right now, given how hot they've been and given what we know what Vasilevsky can do in a series. So, while they have the toughest schedule, look, just because they have the toughest schedule, as you said, doesn't mean anything. But Nashville also, to a certain extent, is kind of somewhat playing for something, although they're probably locked into the number one wild card. I don't foresee them slide. I mean, them and the Kings are battling, so it does make a difference in terms of who they face, but it depends on if your pleasure is Dallas or Vancouver. And I think most teams, honestly, would rather play Vancouver than Dallas because I personally think Dallas is a much more dangerous team.
Yeah.
Now, Detroit, they play tonight against the Rangers. They play Sunday against Buffalo. Then it's Washington, at Pittsburgh, at Toronto, and then a home and home with Montreal to end the season. I mean, you could say, wow, Montreal. I mean, Montreal beat Florida 6-0 a couple games ago. So they're playing fast and loose. That doesn't mean a guaranteed 4 points, but I mean, that's an easier schedule than what the Penguins have. So I'm just looking at all of them here. The Islanders. Okay. The Islanders have Nashville tomorrow night, the Rangers, at the Rangers, Montreal, at New Jersey, and Pittsburgh.
Right. The two Rangers, that home and home could be a playoff preview.
Yeah, and the 2 Ranger games, I mean, the Rangers right now are fighting for top spot in the Metro. And I do think that does mean something. I know Russ said a couple days ago he didn't think that meant much, but I do think, I think it does. Not to say they're going to play Shesterkin in every game because Quick has played so well that they can play one and the other, not load up too much. I mean, if they have injured players, then they're not going to play them.
They do.
Well, you're right. I'm not saying they're going to throw Trouba in there if Trouba's at 60%, but I do think that they're going to play a representative lineup, and the games do mean something, Russ.
Well,
I don't think they mean much to the Rangers, honestly. I think they won't roll over to the Islanders, but I think the Islanders could out-effort them in those games because I just don't think you're going to get even close to 100%.
Well, okay, Jan, let's think conspiratorially here, because if the Rangers win the Metro, they're either going to play, depending on whether they win the President's Trophy or win the top spot in the East, they're going to play, one of these teams that we're talking about fighting for the second wild card, or if they slip into second, they could play Washington, they could play Philadelphia. I mean, the second-third matchup might be easier than the first versus the second wild card or first wild card matchup. If Tampa is the first wild card.
I think so. We've learned our lesson: never pick your battles in terms of who you want to face, because usually it comes back to bite you in the rear end. So, look, I don't know who. I would, if you ask them, I think they'd say they prefer not to face the Islanders, because I just think the optics associated with playing them, the focus in that first round, the drama to get past that first round, if you do get past it, you could have an adverse impact in terms of the rounds afterwards, in terms of the amount of effort you're going to have to exert to get past it, because in New York, it's going to be must-see TV, and every single paper is obviously going to be writing about the two of them facing each other, which adds to the hype associated with it. I don't look, preference-wise, obviously, you'd much rather face Washington, even with Ovechkin. You'd much rather face Detroit, because I don't view them as being as difficult of an opponent. I'd say in terms of difficulty, Pittsburgh and the Islanders would most certainly be a much more difficult opponent. Pittsburgh, just because of Crosby, and we know what he can do in the playoffs, and the Islanders, just because of the nature of the type of the opponent and the fact that the teams haven't played each other for so long in the playoffs, and the rivalry that exists, just would end up being a monumental. You'd wonder if you'd kind of shoot your entire load in that first round to get past it, and how that impacts you when you go to the next round.
Now, Washington's schedule is sort of like middle of the road. They play some tough games against tough teams, Carolina, but then they play Ottawa, they play Detroit, at Buffalo, versus Tampa, then Boston, and then they finish with Philadelphia on the 16th. Now, this is the thing. I've seen them play two games, one in person a couple days ago, and I saw them play last night against Pittsburgh. They look spent. They look done, Russ. They look like they're gassed.
They could be.
Charlie.
Other teams aren't.
Well, right. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know, even though they have a game in hand on some of these teams, they may have shot their bolt. I don't know if they have anything left. I'm looking, I didn't see anything out of Ovechkin in the game in Buffalo. They were dominated by Pittsburgh once, like I think it was a P.O. Joseph scored a goal, and Ryan Shea, and they were down 2-0, and then it was over with. So
yeah.
I don't know. Positionally they have a chance, but I don't know. Peter, I look at that team, and they've sort of ridden a wave for a little while, but now let's see, they've lost 4 straight: Toronto, Boston, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, after winning 6 of 7. It's just,
isn't that kind of like their season, though? They give themselves false hope now and then there's nothing worse than false hope when you've got 8-9 games left, right? And
right.
That's kind of what they are. Teams are weird. There's a weird psychology within them. And how do you turn it on and figure it out right now after 70 games as opposed to 40 before that? What's the weird thing? Sometimes when you think all hope is off, you loosen up, right? Mm-hmm. Your hands are a little looser on the stick. You don't overthink things. And then all of a sudden you become a spoiler. I'll give you an example. Last night, Calgary Flames came out and scored in the first 4 minutes of the game. That's a team the Jets should steamroll.
Right.
And they ended up winning. But the Jets had to Calgary's playing for nothing. It's house money.
Right.
There's no harm in being a spoiler.
Who was the hit that I saw a big hit?
Pospisil.
Pospisil.
Yeah. On Morrissey. So that was interesting. he came in and Morrissey got up pretty quick. Bonus called him over. I don't know who the officials were, but oh my goodness. Whatever he said, they went back and reviewed it and gave him 5 for elbowing.
Okay.
I think it was kind of a weird one because I don't think he really intended to elbow him. Morrissey saw it. It was definitely a late hit. He didn't have the puck. Actually, you know what it was very reminiscent of in the way the puck went away. He was skating and he went for
Lindros and Stevens.
Well, I was thinking Naslund and Moore.
Oh, yeah.
Very similar in that thing. And Morrissey saw it coming and Possible came up, but it was like when Morrissey saw it coming, the momentum, it's almost like his face rode up onto his elbow. I don't really think he got the true elbow up, but hey, they managed to blow a 5-minute power play, so that was good.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on this because we hadn't done a show since Wednesday when it happened, and I know a lot of people talked about it, and I think it was not much ado about nothing, but blown out of proportion. But I still would like to say that I loved the line brawl between the Devils and the Rangers. I loved it. I absolutely now I think the NHL did the right thing. They didn't make this into a cluster by suspending players. There were 5. I think it was VC and Marino were the first fight, and they got 5-minute majors, and the rest got game misconducts. So 8 players, 4 Devils, 4 Rangers were gone from the game, and that hurt the Rangers more because it was Trouba and Keandre Miller. As opposed to like Kevin Ball or something like that. But Russ, I don't have a problem with it. Let them do that. I think that was the right thing to do. McDermott got his angst out on Rempe. Now I know Rempe did the little wave again. He was so.
These guys are going to keep doing that. There's no way to stop one-upping each other.
Right. But the point is, this makes the rivalry better. And I'm sorry, one of the things that sucks in hockey right now is, okay, remember, it used to be 8 games against your division opponents. And it got boring, but there was real hate there. And they played each other so much that there were fights, and those players hated each other. And that made for good hockey. Now, you play them 4 times. Like if it's the Leafs and the Canadians, you play once at the beginning of the year, once at the end of the year. It's not that much of other than, to the fans, it's not as much of a rivalry. Buffalo Toronto should be a knockdown, drag out rivalry. And we saw a little of that last Saturday when there was not a line brawl, but there was a lot of wrestling at the end of the game after Alex Tuck hit TJ Brody. Fans want more of that.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, there's less of that in hockey. There's more of it in the NFL simply because guys are actually so used to being free agents that they play everywhere and they like everybody, but they still, if they're not making much money, those guys do want to actually inflict punishment. So you have some of it. With the NHL, there's too many guys that are into free agency now that the hate's just not there. Everybody
to that point, Russ. Yeah. After the game, as I'm walking out of the arena, I see Austin Matthews and another Leaf talking with, I think it was Jordan Greenway. And you got to remember, they were in the development program. They were probably played on the same team, so they've known each other since they were 16 years old. So
the hate lasts as long as they leave the ice.
Right, exactly. But after the game, nobody cares as long as
they're not fighting in the parking lot. They're not going on the team bus. They're not doing any of that. But the only thing I can say is this, and they used to do that. There was a flight once with the Flyers and the Rangers, and they had 5 rows in between in the 70s just because they thought they might fight on the flight. So it's not like that anymore. But my point is, it was a little silly. And honestly, if the Devils were fighting for a playoff spot, they wouldn't have done it. There's no way they would have done it because there were too many players in that game, and it was too much of a risk. But they know they're out of it, so they were like, "Fine, let's do it." And that's like, okay, whatever.
But Anthony, when we get down to the last couple games, if there are teams that are going to play each other, or there's a possibility of them playing each other, there's going to be some fights and there's going to be some cheap shot bull crap. And I'm thinking like say for example, Florida playing Toronto or Tampa playing Toronto or Florida playing Tampa if they have a chance to meet in the first round. Lomborg and Cousins and Bennett, those guys, they're going to be out there.
I'm waiting for the Leafs for you to announce some of the Leaf players there.
There's one guy, Ryan Reeves. They got one guy from friggin' Winnipeg.
No Leafs mentioned. They got 3 Panthers right off the hop. So.
They've got one guy, Anthony. He's from Winnipeg.
The Leafs are too soft. That's why.
We have to make excuses because he's from Winnipeg. That's why. But no, I'm just saying it's like that crap's going to happen when even with playoff teams when it comes down to the strategic matchup.
Everybody's stressed. This is how they get their stress out. You got to get some of the excess angst out. We don't like each other, so let's throw hands. We'll feel better instead of doing a communal group hug and talking it out.
Well,
it's fist therapy.
I'm not sure if John Tortorella is going to lead us in that communal group hug, but
definitely not.
I got to the rink late this morning, and I don't know if he even held a media availability. There was an optional skate there.
He did. No, he did because
he did. There was definitely a press conference that he had with the reporters there. So
but
the only time he doesn't hold one is when they have a day game, and that's when he won't hold a pregame availability then.
But right now, I mean, we've just been over the last half hour. We've been talking about like these teams piled up at the in the bottom of the bottom portion of the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. Now with Pittsburgh winning, they're 2 points out, and Washington and Detroit are struggling, and the Islanders are peaking at this moment before they collapse and miss the playoffs like I expect them to. But the Flyers right now, Buffalo, Columbus, Montreal, New Jersey, they actually have the easiest of
the pathway's there. But as we all saw against Montreal and against Chicago, nothing's a guarantee for this team.
But they're starting Fedotov, or excuse me, is it Fedotov?
Fedotov. It's pronounced Fedotov. It's like any Russian name that you have to pronounce with the middle is the emphasis. The O is emphasized. So
we've been saying it wrong for 4 friggin' years.
We had
really
had an opportunity to interview him since then. Since the draft year, we had didn't understand much English.
It was 7. It's 7 years.
He basically told everybody during the opening press conference.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is following a pattern. Like on a back-to-back, the pattern I think this season has been they started Carter Hart on the front end and Urson on the back end in recents. So this is not necessarily completely out of the ordinary. It's just
not yet. I think the pattern.
Here's the thing. That's what I'm going to say is considering the situation now, and considering how much Urson has in the tank at the moment,
right.
I said this the other day. You get a really good start out of Ivan Fedotov. That number one goalie slot is officially fluid at that point. If he has a strong performance against Buffalo, we could say that they haven't lost faith in Urson. I don't think it's a case they've lost faith in Urson.
Right.
I think at a certain point there is concern for the amount of wear and tear that he has on him right now. I think how many games did Fedotov play over in how many games in their season?
I'll look.
Not as many. See, he had like 44.
No. This year he didn't. He played fewer games than.
So he's coming over and he's got a little bit. And again, the element of the unknown, and it's possible his wear is not anywhere where Urson's is at.
He played 44 games.
That's what I thought. That was the number, 44 games. So. Again, the style of play also there versus here. Again, we can put all these things into the mix. Sam's playing more games than he's probably ever had before in his career.
Well, obviously,
Anthony, you're raising an interesting point here, and I think there's probably some interesting work to be done about how often this affects certain teams. And if we're going to look into data, should we be looking into the same thing that people hate about the NBA? But is load management an issue that the NHL needs to consider?
It is.
It is. And is it being considered?
I talked about it before the season began with Atkinson and Couturier, and by mid-season, then they were starting to do something about it. and it was already too late because then Couturier got hurt and it already started the downward spiral. But yes, load management needs to be a thing with certain NHL teams, with certain players. When you've got guys
in certain situations, like I said, with a Couturier, you don't, after 2 years of back issues,
right,
ride him the way that John Tortorella.
I'll bring up a thing that's been a bit of a controversial point in Winnipeg right now. That is the play of Kyle Connor since he came back from his knee injury. Mm-hmm. He has not been good. And would it be better for the player, the team, and the league if Kyle Connor can go do conditioning stints for in-game stuff with a farm team, in and out? And should that be something that's a readily available use so that you can get players in? So if he goes and plays 10 minutes on the Moose, or if Couturier goes down and plays on the Phantoms for 10 minutes for his first game back,
right?
Certain situations, it's about timing, it's about pace, it's about understanding how your body behaves. And I know I'm the guy who made the point to Kevin Allen saying, well, if you're fit, you're fit. If you're not, you're not. But I'm also the person who says, I know NHL players are truly never 100%.
Not at this point in the year, for sure.
Not at this point in the year. But fitness is also the cardio, the timing, the overall thing. Not like, do you have a ache in your leg all the time? But it's like, is it in here and up there? Because fatigue is a factor in how you play the game. The more tired you get, the more mistakes you made. Should we have a way to get these guys back? We want stars being stars, not a shell of themselves.
Well, Connor could have agreed to a conditioning stint. You don't have to go through waivers for that. I mean, that's something that, he could have, but maybe the organization doesn't want to risk sending him down to the American Hockey League.
I don't think it's that, Mike. A lot of players don't want to do it.
Right.
What Pete's saying is reasonable, but a lot of times teams talk to the players, and the players are like, I don't want to go down.
Right. Yeah. There's a genuine resistance there because somebody's going to try to make their mark hitting them or something.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys know I don't follow baseball until about September 15th.
Right.
Do pitchers not, when they're coming back, not do simulated games and stuff where they're throwing and trying to see a process of the thing to do it? Like you can literally, you may not have to be inactive in the play of a game, but you can set the pace, you can set the variables of how you want the guy to throw. It would make sense at just even my cranial level that's the way people should come back.
I would say the one thing that I think would be the counter to that is that you have a lot more time, I think, in baseball potentially for that. With a 162 game schedule and have that period of time. I mean, that's why they have 15 to 60 day, DLs where that I think those things get built in.
Yeah.
And in hockey, it's just much more, again, when you're at 82, you have that much less time to be able to on ramp, and you also have that many less gates to sell tickets in.
Yeah. I mean, Peter, they throw simulated games, then they'll go down to single A, then they'll go up to double A, they'll move them up, and then, that's, with Garrett, when Garrett Cole, knock on wood, comes back in June or July, he'll be probably pitching down at their spring training facility in Tampa, and then he'll pitch in Somerset, and then he'll pitch in AAA, and then he'll be back. So, but it's a process.
That's a heck of a lot different. More different than skating in a yellow jersey for a few practices. Right. That's an hour of interrupted ice time and different things.
Or skating with a skill staff. Like that.
Yeah. It just seems that we're experiencing more and more of this. And I don't think we've ever been at a point in the NHL where the game has been as physically demanding on the players as it has been in the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Like we've got guys coming into camp who are training all summer, and they've had 2 weeks off to go fish and swim, and then they're training again. Then they're coming into camp, they're getting beat up, and then they got to do 82 games. I mean, my perfect solution is the regular season should be 60 games.
Yeah.
And we get way more out of it. But that's me.
Now, okay, so right now the East is I'll just go through it quickly here. Boston is leading the Atlantic by 4 points with 5 games to go. So they have the advantage. There's one more head-to-head matchup between the Panthers and the Bruins, but the Bruins have the inside track on winning the Atlantic. The not President's Trophy, but it likely would be because they're a few points ahead of the teams in the West. The Rangers are at 106, Boston's at 105. So whoever wins the President's Trophy or wins the top seed in the East will play the second wild card, which could be one of 5 teams. So and then you have third and the first wild card, the Leafs and Tampa are only separated by 2 points. So right now you have absolutely no idea. Nothing is locked in the East at all.
No.
I think the only certainty right now, and it's not even certain, is Boston wins the Atlantic. Other than that, the Rangers are 5 points up on Carolina. So I think the Rangers are going to win. Are going to win the Metro. But so the division winners are almost set. But who they play and who the other teams 2, 3, and the wild cards, that's completely up for grabs.
Yeah, I did see something I'm going to mention. I saw a video with some analysis with Ryan Whitney and Paul Bissonnette, and they were pointing out how Seth Jarvis didn't sort of pick up his guy, and as a result, a goal was scored. And maybe this is the why Carolina loses. I don't think that's it. I mean, they were talking about Pasternak was on the play. So I think once David Pasternak's on the ice, he could blow up any team and make anybody look bad. So I think that's one thing. I've watched enough of Carolina and covered that whole Carolina Ranger series last time to tell you that it was a lack of scoring. It's always been a lack of scoring. Even guys like Svechnikov went dead. Mm-hmm. And that defense and their goaltending could only handle so much. Their defense could handle more than the goaltending. So I really don't think it's their defensive play at all. I think it's their ability to score. And this year, it looks like they have a little bit more to do that. So we'll see. With
the addition of Gensel has helped.
Yeah.
But I still think, and he's a very good player. But I still think there's not, similar to the Islanders, and I don't think there's enough there for those two teams. The Islanders to get to the playoffs and the Hurricanes to get to the Stanley Cup final. They're always going to run into somebody who's got more scoring or better goaltending. And I think goaltending is always,
that's the thing with Carolina. You wonder about the goaltending, but if they get competent goaltending,
mm-hmm.
I do think the addition of Gensel is something. He's postseason tested. He's been in deep runs. That there's something to be said for that. And I think he helps to stretch Carolina's lineup out a little bit more and potentially open up other scoring possibilities for their forwards.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I think he's by his very nature is a player that draws gravity to it for his for his line mates and opens things up for everybody else. So I can't completely slam the door on the possibility of Carolina. I always kind of look at it and say the year you don't expect a team to do it, it's the year that they surprise you.
Right.
So I'm not ready to close that door on Carolina.
I always use the Sharks Stanley Cup as an example.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Constantly swinging and missing until they finally got one and you didn't expect it.
Right.
So I can't completely. There's enough there in Carolina that they, with the right matchups.
Right.
That's the thing we all have to take into account. Teams get, and we've seen it how many times in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Like a boxing match.
You don't expect to get knocked off. Get knocked off.
Well, we were just
Florida to be in the final last year.
We were just saying it before. The 2-3 matchup in the Metro might be a much easier matchup than whoever the Rangers play. The Rangers could end up playing Tampa, in depending on who finishes with the
second.
second.
One of the reasons why we've all had this conversation where this playoff format to me doesn't work.
Yeah,
it should be 1-3.
Conference should be conference.
What Anthony said about styles, I did learn a long time ago as a kid because I learned it in boxing because I saw that Ali could beat Frazier and Foreman could beat Frazier, but he couldn't beat Ali, and Ali could beat Foreman. Like it's just sometimes there is that one team, that one guy you can't get past.
Mm-hmm.
And Randall Tex Cobb couldn't beat anybody. Now
Flyers can beat the Devils in the playoffs until it didn't really matter.
So does that mean that the Leafs are Randall Tex Cobb? No. Okay. So all right, let's swing to the West because the race for the wild card is over with. The Blues are 7 points behind the Kings.
Yeah.
So it's over. I don't have to reach for the sign. It's being laminated, Anthony. So finally, it's in the shop. But what fascinates me here in the Pacific is right now, if I'm LA, I'm calling up Jamie Storr or Mario Lassard or John Blue or some bad LA King goaltender from the past and putting him in the last 7 games and making sure I finish in the second wild card and I don't play Edmonton. Not because I think Edmonton is good, but because they can't beat them. There's a Boston-Toronto mental block when it comes to LA and Edmonton. I want Edmonton to play Vegas because Vegas will kick their ass. And I think, I think that'll be a great series. I think Vegas will win.
Here's something. So you mentioned the name Jamie Storr, and years ago when I was first starting as a writer, I wrote an article about Jamie Storr in In Goal magazine for Kevin Woodley. And Jamie Storr basically took, because I asked him about coming back. He said he's always willing to come back if he can add another wing onto his house. So it has to be worth his while. But that was the quote.
Nice. No, but
I thought it was great.
But right now, like if I'm the Kings, because right now Vegas is in third with 92 points. The Kings are at 91. They played a game more. So right now Vegas has got a little bit of an inside track, but it's only a point right now. So anything can happen. But Vegas, Edmonton, Peter, I want that. I want to see that.
Me too.
I'll dine out on
it. And the night before it opens, I want Mark Stone to rise up like the Undertaker in WWE. I like just
like the Undertaker.
Yeah. Just out of the blue.
All of a sudden, Thomas Hurdle and Mark Stone.
It would have to be an RKO from nowhere. That's what it would have to be.
And then I hope at the end of the game in the game 7 as Vegas eliminates the Oilers, McDavid and Stone both annihilate each other like Iron Man and Thanos. Like, and then everything's right in the world.
I am
inevitable.
But I mean, right. So right now,
I'm Mark Stone.
I'll tell you, if Mike could snap his fingers,
the literal Infinity Stone.
If Mike could snap his fingers, the anchor bar would be gone. There'd be no more commercials on television. A lot of things would happen.
It would be a brave new world, Russ. But okay, so Vancouver is locked into first place, and they're right now they seem to be locked into the second division. So that means they're right now it looks like it's going to be Nashville. So Vancouver, Nashville. I don't think I give Nashville a lot of credit. I didn't expect them to be this good. They had that long winning streak after.
I don't think anybody did.
Yeah, no, I mean Saros is playing.
We all thought they were rebuilding.
Retooling. Forsberg, O'Reilly's had a great year there. They've played above and beyond expectations. Now, if I'm Vancouver, Peter, Demko's been out for a while. They haven't played very well since the trade deadline. I don't know if it's just like, we got really nothing to play for. So we'll just be home and cooled out and turn it on in game 1. Sometimes that's scary. Sometimes a team can't just turn it on right when you need to.
You can't. That's the problem.
No, you can't. And here's one thing that's being said about the Canucks. And I think it's a valid criticism. And it's not necessary. It's about the Canucks. It's more about one player. When is the last time Elias Pettersson stepped up and dominated a game? Took it over. I'll hang up and listen.
I mean,
because it has not happened in quite some time, and that's what the whole controversy was about. With it, we went through the controversy. Will he resign? He got Nylander, Marner's money. There was all sorts of conjecture about stuff.
Peter, what you're saying is, whoever makes the most money on the team needs to step up and do that in a big game, and not everybody does that.
No, right. But that's the buzz coming out of Vancouver right now, and it's one of the concerns because they've been mediocre. So yes, they've sewn it up, but the point here is, I wouldn't be surprised if they got rolled game 1 because how they're playing right now is not going to get them through.
Well, and
they need their star player. Look, every team needs their star players to play like stars.
It's not Mark Messier minus the potato chips. It's just, never mind. I'm just having fun.
It's funny though, because I was going to write something about, what player is under the most pressure going into the playoffs, and Pettersson was on the list, but he wasn't the number one. The number one, I think, is Mitch Marner, because Mitch Marner has the reputation of not showing up in the playoffs. Last year he showed up in the first round and they won against Tampa. He's been out for a while and they've sort of treaded water, but going into the last year of his contract and him probably demanding more than Nylander got, if he doesn't show up, if he does his usual act where he doesn't show up, then the Toronto media and the fans will be just excoriating him. So, I mean, but it's similar to Vancouver. I mean, I can imagine that, Peter, that, now you've paid him 75 million, or I think it was, now you've paid him, now you've got him locked up. Okay, now show me. And if he doesn't show you, then you say, okay, why the hell did we pay you the money?
Because you have to get there, and you still have to have guys to get you there.
Sure.
And he's one of those guys.
But I think the key to that team more than Pettersson is a healthy Demko. If Demko is healthy, they have a chance. If he's not,
the defense still isn't great.
No, it's not. It's not.
They're mobile, but they're not great.
Look, they need Demko. Make no mistake about it. They're biding time right now, but they need Demko.
Yeah. Now in the Central, I mean, it's not a big lead. It's only 3 points, but Dallas has a 3-point lead on Colorado. And I'm sure that that's not great news to the people in Manitoba there, Peter, because, if it's Colorado, Winnipeg, I don't want to face Colorado. I mean, whoever you're going to match up with is going to be a tough first round match, but I think Colorado is, they're scary in a different way than Dallas.
Yeah, they are. They are. I mean, although Winnipeg had a hell of a GIF going today, not really GIF, just a meme of their team. They have like a nice picture of Rick Bowness, like he's won the championship and all the players around it. I'm sure Pete looked at that and said, wow, that's great, but give me some playoff wins. And if they play Colorado, it's over. They're going to lose.
I will say this. I think the Jets can beat Colorado. Two things have to happen. Hellebuck has to play like the way people are talking about him when he was considering the Hart. That's a given. Okay, that's the easy one.
Right.
Rick Bowness has to not coach himself out of the series. And I'm going to give you an example. Last night he started Ehlers, Scheifele, and Velarde. They outshot the Flames, I think, 16-7 in the first period. Completely controlled the play. Came back, gave up a quick one, and then they came back and scored two. Boom, and got a power play goal. That's a coup for the Jets. He switched back Connor with Scheifele in the second period. Why? Or switched Connor and Scheifele back together in the second period. Mm-hmm. They were outshot 16-4 before they changed it back. So what?
He does things on a gut feeling. He's been to the Stanley Cup. He's going to be one of those guys. It's like that old school. It's like these old school baseball managers, Pete. He'll do a million things that you could question all the time, and you have to just take the ride and hope he gets you there. But that's the kind of guy he is.
They love their tendencies. It's like, Peter.
Well, you talk about Dallas fans, right? Like when he left, this is exactly what they were saying about Rick Bowness, is that he coaches himself out of
but after they lost the Stanley Cup, they at least made it to the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard to kill a guy after that.
Yeah.
Everybody right now is looking at, Mitch Marner coming back against Montreal tomorrow. The best line for the Leafs the last few weeks has been Domi, Bertuzzi, and Matthews. It's really worked. Are they just going to plop Marner back on the wing with Matthews when they have a line working and you can put Marner on another line? I mean, that Sheldon Keefe could be coaching himself out of a good position.
At this point, I think it's just length of time with him simply because you go a certain amount of time. If you don't make much progress, you're going to get fired in this league. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's finish up with the Arizona thing because, that's always been a bête noire of mine. And the news that came out that they're preparing themselves for this bid on this this auction on this property in Arizona.
Devil's ready, baby.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, okay, Alex. Hey, Alex, you're a friggin' billionaire. So if you want the land so much, then just make the best bid. But again, something smells here. There's some chicanery going on. I don't know. All I know is this: that team should have been moved years ago. The NHL keeps dragging their feet on this. It's an embarrassment that they're playing in a 4,000 seat arena. If they play there for another, if this happens and they win the auction and they build a building, they're going to be in that little convertible at Arizona State for 3 more years.
It's just weird. It's kind of like if I tell Anthony, hey, I saw this Corvette, this Corvette's for bid online, and then I put a picture up on Twitter and I said, hey, take a look at my new Corvette that I'm going to bid on and win. And that's what they did. They everything is a maybe in that
until everything's done. It's just flawed.
Until it's done.
The problem is that it's
never done.
I feel I keep coming back to how much I feel for the people who work for the team,
Sure.
work there. And they're the ones that are being kind of left out in the lurch here without any certainty, and that's the way I had to look at it. I don't think it's a case where hockey can't work in the desert, but I feel like you have to have an ownership group that's, operating in a committed fashion. And I just don't. They just keep bouncing around. And again, this is, as far as I'm concerned, if this is the quote unquote last chance. Good. The league should not put up with this for much longer.
They made a movie in the 80s. It was called The Never Ending Story, and it should have been about the Arizona Coyotes because
we're going to change the logo to Falcon.
I understand what Mike said though about just it seems weird because this is the first time that we saw a quote online that talked about the team possibly having to relocate if they didn't get the property. And if that's a real quote, and it seemed to be, this is the first time
they're trying to bring the overall bid cost down.
I guess
that's all that.
That's the threat
if we don't get this land, then we're leaving.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but everything is being done on the cheap. The thing in Tempe, they would have won the plebiscite had he bought a PR firm to pump it up. They just expected it to happen. They didn't spend $1 on it.
The 76ers have been doing the same thing with a PR firm, and
it's going nowhere.
And that hasn't exactly made any ground. So that's a PR firm is never a guarantee.
No,
whatever the local situation is.
I'll say this, to be fair, at least the Coyotes renderings that they put online are even better than what the 76ers are doing. So at least they got that going.
I mean, what's the bigger embarrassment for that? What's the bigger embarrassment in professional sports right now? The Oakland A's moving to Sacramento or the Arizona Coyotes, which has been going on for a decade, and they're going to be playing in mullet for 3 more years.
I mean, it's a tie. It's a dead tie.
Yeah, I think it's a 1A, 1B situation right now. So I mean, the Sacramento thing is just ridiculous because, there I could blame ownership even more because ownership just completely foobarred the entire situation. And, let's take a step back. Manfred in himself, and Russ and I both love Rob Manfred, has completely mismanaged the situation, which is a shocker to all of us, of course. And they screwed up this whole situation and smooched the pooch. Then they're moving to Vegas. Then they're not moving to Vegas. Hey, that's going to be great to sell to everybody opposing visitors. You're moving to Sacramento in an 11,000-seat arena that doesn't have any of the amenities that you need to have a professional ball club there. Go at it. Have fun.
I mean, it was funny. Russ and I did a baseball show yesterday, and Nico, the guy who we do the show with, he came up with why aren't you moving instead of Sacramento? Why aren't you moving to the brand new AAA stadium that Vegas is built? I don't even know where it is. Is it near Vegas?
I think it's in Summerlin, which
is
why not
near
Vegas?
Why not do that?
Why is Vegas? But again, you get down to also the mayor of Vegas pushing back on it
Right.
on that as well, because I don't know if it's. I often wonder, again, not to turn this into a baseball show, but
No.
imitation. But it's
Go ahead.
they've now officially, quote unquote, taken 2 teams out of Oakland, and I wonder if they wonder about whether or not that is something that is reflects upon them maybe poorly.
Well, here's what I read online, but it wasn't like a full article. But they say the Giants may have been instrumental in Oakland getting this deal in Sacramento because it also gets them out of their whole area.
Of course
as far
it
as
does.
fans.
Of course they want it.
I believe that happened. I do.
Well, all right. Great show, guys. We will be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for Jan Levine, who departed and came back. Peter Tessier, Anthony Mangione, Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. And Eck.